Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel. And so here I find myself on the day of the start of my electrical installation. Fireworks going off, big fuse, big sighs of relief somewhere. So look, I could have ostensibly started this a months ago, but it has terrified me, this part of the build. I have zero experience, knowledge, less than anything else, like no exposure to this. In fact, have largely avoided anything electrical since I watched my brother get booted across the kitchen one day when he stuck a knife in a toaster in Australia some 30 odd years ago. And so I've avoided it, and I also wanted to be really well educated and really well informed before I even considered doing this on my own. So firstly, huge kudos to the two main people that I am going to credit to this build, the electrical part of the build, and that is 70 Savage. Thank you so much. He has done a number of van builds, I understand, and has got to a level of obvious expertise around this. And the other are the far outright folk, Isabel and Antoine, French Canadians who are engineers, which is encouraging, and they've got the engineering mind. And so I've got their layouts and their plans. I've researched their stuff. I have watched and rewatched many other videos too, to the point that I'm actually feeling ready and capable of doing this part of the build. So it's exciting. I'm excited now, not so scared. I don't want to get electrocuted, but I'm not so scared of blowing up my van, which is really the main piece. Okay, so there's essentially three parts to the electrical system, okay, essentially. The first is the solar array, you know, really, it's the solar array, or let's say, what would we call it? In my build, it's the solar array and the DC to DC alternator charger. These two things basically are the things that are going to give power to the battery bank. The battery bank is the second part of the build, essentially. And the third is all the wiring that wires things to the fuse boxes in the battery bank. And then I guess we could say the fourth are the devices. Yeah, so I guess there's really four parts. We've got the power, the things that power the battery bank. We've got the battery bank itself, wiring to it, and then the devices, the electrical devices. There's two main parts to a off-grid, I guess, build, and that's 12 volt and 120 volt. I need 120 volts because I'm going to be living and working from here, so I'll need to have a computer that can be working and charging or charged, and then I've got a kitchen. Yeah, so it's essentially outlets that I'm adding. I'm not adding anything else like an air conditioner or anything else sexy like that, but I do need that, which means I need an inverter. Okay, so I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna approach this, other than I'm gonna largely show you the steps with which to do the build, which is funny because it's exactly the opposite of what I thought I was gonna do until I watched and rewatched a couple of 70 Savage's videos, and it's like, oh, we do it in the reverse order. Okay, that makes sense. So we're basically gonna be starting with the installation of the batteries. So here goes, back here, this is the battery. You know, the heartbeat of the whole system is going to be right behind us here, and that's what that tall cabinet was for. And the other part of this that I wanted to share as part of my design and energy considerations is that I have removed the battery bank and most of the things that are powered right next to it, all the big powered pieces, away from my body, my energy, which means it's not underneath my dinette, it's not underneath my bed. I don't want them there. I want them away from my body as far as possible. And same with the fridge, which will be on top of this, right there. And so this is about EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies. You don't want those things interacting with your energy. You want to get them as far away from your body as you can. So it took a lot of rethinking of a normal van build for me to get to my plan layout, my layout here. So that's an important consideration for me. If it is for you too, then you might want to watch on. All right, let's get going. Okay, so the next thing that I've done is simply secure the batteries in place. They're very heavy and very unlikely to move, especially when they're down low. In a van, it's just that I wanted to do this extra little piece. So I've used these straps. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So my 3 Batterborn batteries are secured with these straps that have these really strong loops that you can loop into your installation, and Batterborn has this little loop here that you can actually loop them through, which is super cool. So I'll put a link down below to these. These ain't going nowhere. And now my battery's in place and my ground is ready to be attached. Okay, that's the grounding wire mounted to the chassis of the van. About to be mounted to these batteries. Sure we can't get in there. Nope. Yeah, we can. There we go. And that's the back. We can't see that very well. Yep. There we go. Okay. Securely mounted grounding wire to bare metal in my van, in my battery compartment. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm prepping these battery cables. I have 2 aught wire, which when you read it will be 2/0, pronounced 2 aught. I have 3/8 inch copper ends, and I've measured them from the battery terminal to the battery terminal. So these are custom made battery basically, and then you just thread this piece into here and then you crimp it and then you put heat shrink over it. So what I'm about to show you how to do is to crimp it. I'm just using this cool little device, this little hammer crimping tool. Can't afford one of those $60 hand ones for this size. This is working fine, so let me show you what I do. Okay, so I've threaded it in like this, and then basically you bring up the spring, you pop it in, to do it that way, pop it in, see, and then you make sure the wire's tight, you line up the position you want to crimp it in, okay, then you hold the wire and then you hammer the heck out of the top, basically. I'm just doing this on each side, and then I'm going to do the other side. Make sure it's in. Okay, I've literally just done 2 sides. It's not pretty doing it this way, but it does a little cross stamp on there, and that is crimped, and it's hard. You're not going to be able to pull that out, and I'm going to put heat shrink around it. So let's do the other side. So now I'm going to go and basically put the heat shrink on those across here, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so this bit's super easy. You just, where'd it go? Okay, so here's what I've just crimped. We slip these over the top on each side, and then we grab a hairdryer or a heat gun, and you just start shrinking it. 2 aught cable, 2 of them to cross over my 2, and I'll show you how to install those. Okay, so I left off having finished made these cables for the battery bank. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to slow this process down, because I had to do a lot of research to work out these pieces. So thanks to 70 Savage, I've got these extra, which are Blue Sea Systems 300 amp terminal fuses. It's like an extra level of fuses, safety, right at the battery terminal. I've got 1 for each, okay, and I want to show you exactly how I'm connecting them, because no one showed me how. It kind of, people often assume these things are obvious to us. So I've taken all the nuts, bolts, and etc. off, okay? They're already on here, like for this one. Take it off, grab said fuse with hole, pop it over here, okay? Pop it over here where it fits. Okay, that's simple. All right, I've done that with this one too, okay? And then next we actually attach this, okay? My ones, of course, that have been built to size, gonna go in place. Does that make sense? Okay, So we've got fuse, and then we've got the lugs, and now we start attaching. Okay, I'm going this first, and then we go the, I can never remember what these are called, secure nuts. I love the heck out of these things. For some reason, brain fart every time I try to work out what they're called. That goes next, and then the nut. Okay, let's screw it on. I'll tighten these later, but that's the order. All right, I just want to show you the order. We've got fuse, we've got lug, and then we've got our nuts on the outside of that. So I'm going to do that for this one. And then of course we tighten them up, because these are terminals. These are things that need to have electricity flowing through them. So it's all finger tightened at this point. All right, so we have finger tightened all of these. We go back. We grab our 1/2 inch and we tighten it up. These are terminals again, they need to be communicating with each other. I found this much easier to use than, you know, an adjustable spanner, adjustable wrench. Much easier. Red side done. This is actually also to stop you accidentally crossing over, right? So we actually get to put this little cap on, just like that, to try to avoid that exact scenario. But as I understand at this point, except for, I'm actually going to have to fit a bus bar across here soon. All right, we're going to need to see how that goes, but I think I can do that at this side too. Anyway, now on to the black side. Okay, so I've just done the same thing to the black ones. Okay, they're just attached differently and directly. And I've left this one long nut here. I hope that I can fit things in that direction, otherwise I'll turn it around. But I'm going to have to put a grounding bar, and then I'm going to have to attach the bus bars to each of these. So what this has effectively done at this point is that's turned these 3 batteries, 3 100 amp hour lithium ion batteries, into a 300 amp hour lithium ion battery. Okay, so these are now connected in series, and I need to do the next things now, which is ground it, on off switch. That's what we're going to do next. Okay, this has taken me a while to do just because I'm working in a very small space here, but effectively what I've done now is off the right side, at least at this point, of the battery bank. I've got 4-aught cable, and I've done all the crimping and shrink wrapping, right? And I've attached it to the battery. It then goes down to a 300 amp waterproof fuse that then goes to the Blue Sea Systems on-off switch, which is a safety thing. The input on that side, the output comes out here, and then basically goes to the positive bus bar, right? So I just want the one with the caps on it. Okay, so I've got that all set up at this point, and now I'm just about to test it. So for my build, I'm effectively following the wiring diagrams of Far Out Ride and 70 Savage, okay? And so I don't have 4 batteries, I've got 3 batteries, but basically I've just wired up 3 batteries, and I'm ticking off things as I go. I'm literally just following their wiring diagram. I've done all my calculations already, okay? So these guys, I'll put the link below. You can get this yourself, or you can do your calculations. You put in how many batteries you got, how big your inverter is, how big, you know, how big your solar array is, and it's going to tell you all the wiring you need and the size of various systems. Okay, so that's where I'm at. I've done what's ticked, and now I'm just going to do a little test. Okay, here's a good example of I've actually mounted that backwards, right? Why? Because when you buy a lot of these fuses, they come with 0 instructions. And a lot of people that are teaching us about these things assume we know these things, that it's logical, that, I don't know, didn't know why it couldn't go in the bottom out the top. But after much research, that is the wrong way round. This needs to be mounted there, that needs to be mounted here. As in, the cable from the battery needs to go in the top, and the auxiliary needs to go in the bottom, as in to any appliance, including the on-off switch. So I'm about to reverse that out. Okay, it's been remounted in the correct orientation. Fortunately, I hadn't actually screwed in any of my devices yet. They're still floating around whilst I'm positioning things here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I need to get okay, so we've got our battery bank in this direction. The positive stuff has come off the right side, and so off the other side of the battery bank I'm about to install a line to the negative bus bar. Okay, actually back to my diagram here. Okay, so off the other side of the battery bank, negative line here, right? It's actually got to go to the shunt, right? So the shunt basically comes off the negative side, the black, if you like, side of the battery bank. Okay, it's going to go here. It's then actually going to go to a ground. It doesn't show that on here, but then this is the cable to this, and this is what I'm installing here, right? So this is a Victron battery, smart battery management system. This is the shunt that I'm about to install, and this will be the thing that you're looking at. Okay, so that's what I'm about to install now. I'm just going to do a little box opening for a second. With any of these things, you are RTFM. Read the fucking manual, right? So there's the manual. There's all the components. So before I install anything, I'll read the manual. It's going to be the thing that you see. There's the shunt itself. There's the cabling for that. And let me read through that before I start any installation. This happens to come with a really lovely big visual installation manual, right? I love these kind of things. It just takes you through every single step that you can literally just watch and tick off and double check against. Okay, so that's what I'm about to do. So I'll end up calling this video how to not install your electrical system. So this is twice I've had to rethink and really look at what I'm supposed to do. And you know, when you look out there, there's a lot of contradictions often. Okay, so I haven't got this finished here, but the shunt that goes to the battery monitor should be the first thing that intercepts the negative side of your battery bank to the shunt, and then to the bus bar, and then that can be grounded. I literally had these reversed, okay? I'm just waiting on some lugs for that piece to be installed, okay? So whilst I'm waiting for that, I'm going to install this 8 AWG cable here, okay, to the top and the bottom of my 12-volt bank, okay? So this is the next stage in the installation, which is basically the 12-volt side of the installation. Okay, so I've got 8 AWG cable. I've got this very cool crimper. Okay, so I've actually just crimped one side of the black, and I'm going to just do my measurements and do the other side, and then that'll be to the top part, the black. The negative should go to the top part, and the red, the positive, will go to the bottom. So I'm just about to install that. Okay, so the next thing is essentially starting to thread all the wires around the van, right, back into here, as in the DC side of things, back to the DC fuse box. And I'll lead you back again to the far out ride wiring diagram, which I have been literally ticking off when I've installed something, and I keep looking at it and keep looking at how they relate to each other. And so we're here, installed, and now we're looking at my components, their wire type and their fuse type, okay? So I haven't got them all worked out, but I have the wiring worked out for all of these. So that's what I'm about to do. So I've got a bunch of 12 AWG, mainly 14-2, and one 16-2 piece of wire that goes from the device back to the fuse, and sometimes gets intercepted by a switch. That's something I learned. Switches intercept the red positive in between the device and the fuse box. So I've got a bunch of things to start to work out in that respect, and that's what I'm doing now. And by the way, when you see cable, when you're talking about 12 volt, it's usually, we'll say 14.2 or 12.2 or 16.2. And the 2 literally just means 2 wires, okay? When you get to your 120 volt stuff, it will often say 3, sometimes 4, but for an RV installation, it's probably going to be 3, 14.3, okay? And that's 3 wires, which is the positive, the negative, and the ground. And but at the moment we're doing 12 volts, so we're going to have the 2 to be working on. It'll go from the device to the switch if necessary, or directly from the device to the fuse box. I just want to add that when you're starting to do your wiring, you're going to have wires all over the place, and it's going to be very hard to work out which wires for what at the fuse end or at the device end if you don't label it. So you can just use masking tape if you want. I happen to have a little labeler, okay? So for example, I've got fridge. I'm going to print that twice. It's because I want to have it at the fridge end and at the fuse end, okay? I want to make sure I'm very clear on what is what. So that simply looks like this. I'm actually just putting on the wire before I install it. So fridge, fridge, fridge on both ends of the wire. So I am continuing the 12 volt installation. I've already started, I've got half of them in, okay, it's looking fairly tidy. I will tidy that up ultimately, but I've got half of them in, 6 with both black and white installed. And so what I'm doing right now is installing the line, this marine duplex wire for all of these puck lights. So that's what I'm threading up now. And I won't show you the process, but it's threading it, finding a pathway basically through your van, up and over, round through the back, down and across. And then here's a key piece. I had to cut this hole here because I have to intercept the wire with a switch somewhere, right? So I had to actually make a pathway for the switch, which will be there, then it goes back up, and it comes back through the back here, and then it comes down, and then it's going to end up in the fuse box. So finding a pathway is definitely part of it, so that's part of the fun. But today what I'm talking about is one of the things that I just for some reason just couldn't get my head around, which was installing my puck lights and my dimmer switches for them. And I can actually thank Akela from Linnea from Linnea and Akela for this one. She's actually got a really good description. I'm going to imitate a little bit and also bringing in my design know-how in that respect. And the moment of truth, I'm going to test it by turning on the power. There should be 6 undermounted lights. Come on. Okay. Oh, look at that! Very exciting. 4 on this side, 2 on this side. That's fantastic. And all the fittings in place before I put the back panel on. So I just wanted to give you a power update. So I'm doing quick disconnects on everything. So they're all my LEDs and my propane solenoid. That will be an outlet, water pump and water gauge. And then throughout, all of these in the ceiling are quick disconnects and ready to go. I have started doing my 120 volt outlet installation. I haven't shown you this because it's just very slow and very tedious. And I think I might have shown you this. These are some of my gauges up here. There's my 120 volt panel, and then in here it looks pretty much the same, except that now that my 12 volt panel is completely loaded, and I started to tidy up my cabling. It's not finished yet, but it's getting there. And of course the solid charge controller and DC is in place. So that's where we're at. So I'm actually just about to I'll show you what I'm going to do. Got a little switch here, which is going to be a little touch switch for some entry lights, which haven't been powered yet. And then these are those panels, right? So this is all my lighting. This is just a little on-off for the water gauge. The rest of them are just touch dimmers. That will be an outlet. That is the water pump on and off, and a water gauge. So I'm just about to mount those. Okay, so I'm just about to install my switch panels. This is my water gauge and my water pump on and off. It's not working because I've taken the fuse out. So quite complex system back here. But the whole idea of this, and you can see I'm a crazy labeler for obvious reasons, that if these ever have to get pulled out, I want to know what's what, okay? So now I've got them all linked up, and now I'm just going to be tucking them back in so I can actually attach this, which is very, very exciting. So we're right there. Okay, so I am mounting my 3000 watt inverter today, and it's kind of a big deal. Sort of the last phases of the electrical installation, and it's about upping the voltage 10 times. So yeah, here goes. Okay, so my inverter is all wired up with its remote switch in place there to the electrical panel that goes to all the outlets, and then of course down here through into the battery bank. It was a bit hard for me to film it whilst I was doing it, but it's the moment of truth when I turn the inverter on. Yep. Green light says on, and I've just plugged in my Dremel into this just to see if it works. Holy moly. Okay, well that works. Amazing, very excited. And then just checking my panel back here. I'll turn the mains on, and then the outlet switches, and you can see their lights have come on, which means they're on. And once again, I've plugged into my GFCI here just to test it, my Dremel again, and here goes. Oh my goodness. Wow, my power works. Very stoked. Okay, so this is sort of showing you the whole electrical system. We're getting a bit of a preview to the finished van build here. But here's the little on-off switch for the entry lights, which I thought was both a safety and a cool thing for night. These ones here. Straight at the battery bank, right? So below the fridge here, we've got the battery bank and the 12 volt fuse box, a lot of fuses. The shunt, and then over here we have the DC, etc. And then just a lot of wiring that comes up the back of here, but it's very tidy. There's a lot of ventilation, so it's very cool. And there's my little 12 volt DC fuse panel thing, so I know where's what. Otherwise, of course, I've got labeling everywhere. And then above it, of course, we have the fridge. A little bit of a dirty fridge. You might be able to hear that on at the moment. Above that, we have the inverter, which is working hard right now because I am working in the van. And then we come to the switches. I love these switches because they only come on and off when something's on, because I like the van to be really dark at night. Now they're on off, or you press them and they dim. So all of my interior lighting dims, which I absolutely love. Otherwise we've got the puck lights. You saw that in a previous video. There's all the puck lights. Right, and then you can see my sort of little LED strips and they're literally peel and stick. They're easy to install, super easy. And you can also see them here illuminating my subfloor, which I really love. It's so nice to have that on. It's one of the things I use the most. Otherwise, for power, we've obviously got a lot of other things powered here. We've got some extra these lights back here. We've got a little fan, which I've used a lot in summer so far. And things like pumps. So back in here, we've got the pump on-off switch for the water. And then we also have power to this little water gauge, okay, back over here where it's needed. And then over here we've actually got what's called the switch for the propane solenoid. So when I switch it, that means propane is being released into my pipes. When it's off, the solenoid is keeping the propane, you know, in the propane locker. As you can see, my 120 volt bits and pieces, okay, so I've got something charging there at the moment. I've got another one up in over here. I have one down here which I use when I'm working, okay. So that's actually all I've got my 120 volt to is outlets, but they're very important. And yeah, and then there's the panels. You've seen the panels, right? At the moment I'm at 76% because it's kind of grey outside. And then that's actually just my remote switch for the inverter. So that's it for my electrical installation. Phew, thank goodness.